Bill Baxter. Bill's an interesting guy. I think you can see his bio up there, but he said that he likes Boston because he earned his first million because of a company here. I guess that's a fair way to put it. So he's been a very successful entrepreneur. He's the chief technical officer of Vizio, major TV manufacturer. He's going to tell you about what they're doing, and I think you'll find it compelling. By the way, at the end of all these chats, I'm going to try and come up and facilitate questions. So at the end, we'll have about 5-10 minutes to go through Q&A. And Bill is an interesting guy to ask questions of. So with that, I bring you Bill.
All right, thank you. Really appreciate it. Thanks for taking the time to come out. I hope I can leave you with really one central thesis, which is TV is the king of things, at least in the household. I really want to keep hearing that and hearing that and hearing that. It stokes my ego. It makes me feel better about myself. I think this is a pretty broad, ludicrous claim, but I'll actually attempt to defend it. Yes, it is laughable in many ways. There are plenty of devices. I could be lying, and it could be self-serving. I could be misleading you, or I could be just completely clueless. But the fact of the matter is, even though it seems very self-serving and pompous, because we are the #2 TV manufacturer overall in the US and #1 of all the US TV companies, there are some very sound reasons why the TV actually can play more of a infrastructural element in the smart connected home as opposed to just another device in the home. But that sort of begs the question: why not the smart speaker? Why not a router? Why not some other smart 5G modem that becomes a gateway to a LAN-less household? And I think those are all possibilities for what this could be, but still, I think the TV has an edge. The other question is, will there actually be a king of things in the household? Maybe it's too self-serving to think that a single device could act as the king of all things. But I would suggest that the major technology players in the industry actually tend to lean towards this thesis as well. And then, of course, it is good to be king, right? I mean, except for the few examples that were beheaded and killed. So yeah, I would love to be the king of things in the household. That would be a great thing for Vizio. Let's take a little detour and talk about some of the fun facts about TVs. We start with, by 1960, 90% of households had TVs. In fact, that number is largely the same today. It's maybe bumped up towards 95% of US households have TVs. In that population mix, and as Mark had indicated, one of our big plays is on the data side. We're very transparent about that. And we have about 10.5 million devices that are opted in for data collection and sharing in our own active population. It is the largest single data set for TVs available commercially. And that in our larger data set of TVs, we generate about 486 billion transactions daily. So these TVs are out there, they're generating a lot of data, a lot of valuable data that can both improve consumer experiences and generate more revenue for advertisers. The beauty of TV is that you just sit there and watch it, like 4.5, 5 hours a day. You just sit there and watch it, and so it's a pretty passive activity. I was amused because I'm kind of dating myself, but I actually remember the Zenith clicker remote, not because I was that young or that old, I guess, but I think later on my dad had to have one with the cable all the way to the TV, and it literally was a clicker. And then I can just remember my grandparents and everybody with TV trays, and you're sitting in front of the TV, eating TV dinners, and then you're just sitting there glued, waiting for the next message to come out of the TV. And so there's a lot of benefits of being the TV in this landscape, obviously. And the biggest thing being is it generates hundreds of billions of dollars in revenue a year. There's like $100 million in subscription TV services, 100 billion, and then another 70 billion in advertising revenue. And that's mostly live linear broadcast advertising. It's not even the over-the-top stuff, the streaming stuff that you can do targeted advertising. It's much more difficult to do targeted advertising in that market. So, okay, why not the TV then? Why not the TV become this hub, if you will, or the anchor of the smart home? They do make great anchors. I mean, and I'll give you, by that I don't mean boat anchors. I'm sure if you've owned a Vizio TV and you were unhappy, maybe you would think about using it as a boat anchor. But mostly, they're very good at anchoring the home. As I had indicated, maybe 95% of homes have TVs, so they're ubiquitous. So are mobile phones, right? I'm sure everyone in this room has a mobile phone, but your mobile phone is not tied to your household, unlike the TV. The TVs are really a unique household device. It doesn't move from room to room, and so you know that when there's activity, it is with a high degree of certainty because someone is in that home messing with that TV. TVs, smart TVs, you know, on Vizio, these are Vizio stats, have very high connectivity rates, 82% plus, and we're constantly trying to use new technologies to drive that connectivity rate up even higher. And then lastly, you know, they're very powerful compared to other devices. They don't have as much of the price sensitivity as some devices do, like smart speakers that sell for maybe, you know, $20, and that's roughly their BOM cost. You know, TVs they're relatively powerful, they have a lot of memory, they have a lot of flash, so they can do a lot of things that you would want to do if you wanted to somehow aggregate services around a specific device. And what that does is it creates a household link. And so now we can link that household in many ways. It has this fixed household identity, the IP address, if you will. That identity can be linked to first and third party data sets. You could link it to Experian, and you could know potentially the demographic of that consumer that has that TV. You could also mash it up with other data sets to produce segmentation that would do things like tell you that this household is a likely truck buyer or a likely cruise, you know, someone who wants to go on a vacation cruise or whatever. And so you can use that in order to target advertising specifically to the interests of the household. And if you're aware of things like AWS IoT's Greengrass, where, you know, the TV or some device in the household could act as a bridge for services in an intermittently connected paradigm, the TV could do that quite easily. In fact, all SmartCast TVs that we produce are actually RESTful web servers that sit in the home, serve up services, and it could indeed serve up things like Greengrass. And with that, you could do local machine learning models. So if you wanted to not push things to the cloud to do local machine learning to you know, say face recognition or whatever, you could do that locally. And with the next generation of system-on-chip chipsets, they have built-in AI engines already. So you can preload models into the TV, serve up a service to an intermittently connected device, and that might be doing things like facial recognition, voice recognition, or other sorts of threat detection, whatever it is, right? So there's a lot of opportunity then to leverage the chipset that's powering these TVs in order to develop and deliver more powerful services in the home. And then, you know, as the link, you know, you have all these services in your home, and you will have more services in your home over time, presumably, whether it's your security services or your smart home automation stuff, like what ConnectM is showing with their whole home thermostat or, you know, heating control, which I think is quite fascinating. The TV is going to become more and more of a central way to interact and you know, with all of that, all those services. I mean, so if you want to, you know, look at the layout of your home and see what temperature it is in any given room, or if you want go to a particular security camera, et cetera. The TV makes an excellent device for all of that. It is the most beautiful display in your home. And in fact, to that extent, it already is the centerpiece of most smart homes. People just don't think of it as today the centerpiece of the smart home hub, if you will, because that really is ceded to your mobile phone today, mostly is the focal point of IoT in the home. But now the TV can be that IP link, if you will, to the rest of those services. And then if you just look at the trend towards smart voice assistants, Alexa, Siri, Google Assistant, and others, there is just the voice recognition and synthesis side, but then what does it mean to create a hybrid experience around the TV itself, where the TV now becomes a display for a interactive hybrid visual voice experience? This is an industry that's quite fragmented today, and there really are no standards, if you will, around how that can happen. But ultimately, I think consumers will strive to have more and more integration of what their smart connected home is with their entertainment experience. So if you look at just the SmartCast itself, we already are the most connected TV in the industry today. We announced at CES our support for AirPlay and HomeKit. I think it was quite a shocking announcement for the industry. We won Best of CES as a result of it for our OS. And today you'll see some other announcements from Apple. They're making some major announcements around their new TV service. And so it all kind of comes together there. But we already had Google Assistant integration and Alexa integration. And so our TVs, were uniquely situated in the ecosystem to participate nicely, if you will, what we call the play nice strategy, to interface with all of those different services. If you look at what the TV could become going from where it is today, you then can imagine a world where you have widgets running on your TV that interface with all of your IoT devices, whether that be security cameras, thermostats, video doorbells, or whatever. And so that TV becomes very tightly integrated with it. But there's other integrations that lead it to then be able to generate more revenue, TV commerce, if you will, that are just now becoming possible. So for our part, even though we play nice with, say, Google and Amazon and Apple, we don't want to be disintermediated from what that future is. We don't want to, anytime you want to control your lighting or control the TV or transact, add something to your Walmart shopping cart, whatever, we don't want to be disintermediated from that and have Google get the first crack or Amazon get the first crack. We do want to make sure that if that's what you want, if you want Alexa or Google, we'll give that to you. But for our part, we will integrate voice directly into the TV in the second half of this year, and it will be front-ended by our own voice solution, which will then fan out to the various voice services if that's what you wish, and we'll continue to play nice in those ecosystems. But what that means for us is that we can now innovate faster than even Amazon and Google and Apple, because we own the TV firmware. They don't have like some black box software that runs inside our TV. So in order for them to gain access to that, we have to collaborate. The AirPlay collaboration alone, while Apple has not asked us to talk about it, was a very, very long time. It feels like, giving birth to an elephant. I mean, it was just a big project. It took a long time, and we're not even where we want to be from an innovation perspective as a result of that. So now we can innovate faster because we're front-ending the voice. We don't have to worry. Do you have power commands, input commands, show the weather commands? Do you have all these? Because now we can pluck off all the high use cases that we want to handle, and we can innovate very rapidly, and then use that as a foundation for integrating the same sorts of Alexa Show-like capabilities or whatever into our device when they're ready to do so. But even more importantly, it allows us to align our product strategy with our retail channels. So if you bought that TV at Costco or Walmart or whatever, we can then pre-provision, align it with that retail channel, and now you can transact, add things to your shopping cart. You can be reminded about fulfilling, refulfilling certain objects or products that you purchase. And so it becomes a very strong component now in that overall TV commerce ecosystem that was really mainly on your mobile device, laptop. And then lastly, it provides an awesome opportunity to close the loop on advertising opportunities. So imagine, if you will, we know what commercial you're watching if you've opted in to allowing us to do automatic content recognition. And we also know that that Walmart has a sale, and you can easily add that to your shopping list. Or as we're watching a show like Ellen, we can pop up Ellen's list and you can interact with that, or you can also send it to your smartphone. So there's a lot of opportunities here for us as that central point. So, I mean, really this was all just very self-serving about why I really want Vizio SmartCast to be the king of IoT in the smart home. I think there are real reasons why it will be a much bigger infrastructural component than it is today. Having said that, what are the main challenges? There is the open versus closed ecosystem, and I'll talk more about that. I mean, should OEMs try to retain control as much as possible in order to develop better experiences, or should we be playing nice and foregoing any proprietary stuff? Then there's the cost-benefit analysis on it. These TVs last 6-7 years on average in a home. If they are churning through data on my AWS connection and they're having transactional costs for us, we have to bear that burden over that period of time. So obviously, we have to make up that cost, and the best way to make up that cost is to architect well, and I'll talk more about that later, and ensure that you're driving revenues commensurate with your costs. And then lastly, privacy. TVs are actually held to a higher standard of privacy than some devices that probably have more intimate and potentially damaging data, whether it be bank accounts, credit cards, whatever. And so they are held to a very high standard, and it's something, as we look at becoming more integral in the smart home, what does that mean for privacy? So looking at the open versus closed ecosystem, obviously open ecosystems are great. It provides for broad consumer choice. There's going to be more options, and so you can just plug into that and you're good to go. That's been our one main thrust of our strategy, is whether you're in the Android ecosystem, you like Chromecast, or you're in the iOS ecosystem and you want AirPlay, or if you're in an Alexa ecosystem and you love all the goodness of what Alexa has done for smart home automation, we fit into that. So you won't take the TV back. When you get the TV home, you'll find, oh yes, this fits into my lifestyle the way I want it to. There's something to be said for developers. There's no standard OS in TV. There are attempts by, let's say, Google, Roku, Amazon, maybe with Fire TV, to create that open alternative. But the fact of the matter is that once you get past Samsung with Tizen, LG with WebOS, Vizio with SmartCast, it's a barren landscape of there's no volume almost. So you've just kind of taken all the wind or the air out of the room when you take those OEMs out. So there is not one. That means that developers tend to have to do a little more heavy lifting per OEM, which is why we based our operating system on HTML5 and JavaScript, so that we make it super easy for developers to tackle it. And then if you go with an open ecosystem, it's just more scalable over time, and we get free benefits from that over time as well. I don't do any extra work when Alexa is upgraded to provide more services, or Google Assistant or whatever. So we get to take advantage of those. On the other side, closed ecosystems, we just provide tighter integration. Like I said, there are no standards here on how you interact with voice assistants in terms of visual display, or interact with other IoT devices in the home. So we can integrate, we can do tighter integration today where there isn't a lot of innovation. To the point on privacy, the other benefit is, anytime I have data going out of my set of services into third-party services, there's risk associated with that. And I'll go into a little bit more detail on the privacy-related component, but suffice it to say, it's easier to control if it's all in my house. And then there's no disintermediation. I mean, the real problem is that, the TV could, the OEMs could be disintermediated if they don't take a very active interest in avoiding that. I think in the end, you just have to strike a balance. You can't be too open or too closed in this space. And so, we just need to save our place in line. With voice, for example, getting the first utterance, and then figuring out what to do with the utterance after that puts us in control. And since the TV is the last pixel to the eyeball, there's no reason why we should get disintermediated if we continue to play with that mentality. At the same time, I got to give the customers what they want. So if they want Alexa, or any of these other ecosystems, I will give that to them. That is not a problem. When you buy a SmartCast TV, it's like you're getting 3 devices or 4 devices in one, just by virtue of the fact that we will go out of our way and integrate very tightly with those. And then whatever you do, if you're going to go provide some proprietary voice interface to the TV, make sure you execute well. You don't want to be the laughing stock of the TV space, and find out that, customers hate what you did. And all you did was put yourself first in line to be bad at what you're doing. So you really have to execute really well. Moving on to the cost versus benefit analysis here on it. I don't think it should be, you probably know Vizio, if you know Vizio at all, as a value brand in the TV space. And the reason why we're a value brand in the TV space is that there is a lot of money to be made after the purchase of the TV. So we don't need to go charge huge margins for our products. We can be very competitive. We can offer the latest technologies with very low margins and then make it over the total lifetime of the TV. So in terms of costs, we look at things like, what would it cost me to integrate Zigbee, Z-Wave? ConnectM was using 915 megahertz proprietary. That all adds to BOM cost. If I have to add more memory, because I want to store and forward data for the rest of the household. If I want to do more processing on the TV locally, that's going to incur a higher cost for the system on chip that I'm putting in the TV. So all those add up to the BOM cost, which takes down the margins at the beginning or increases your price at retail. So you have to be careful about that. But what really is scary is the OpEx that you incur after you sold the TV. The TV business is like a 6% gross margin business. So you're not making a tremendous amount of money. And because the margins are so low, they're so unforgiving. If there's any failure, if there's any recall, if there's anything like that, you have a challenge. And then you have OpEx, which then layers on top of that for the next 6 to 7 years. Firmware complexity is the next thing. The firmware complexity, the more brains I put in there, the more business logic I put in the TV, the more it costs me to upgrade those TVs. And I'm very loath to do full firmware updates without doing full testing, because I just lose the downstream revenue opportunity. In the worst case scenario, I brick the TV, and then I have to go replace the TV on top of all of that. But the benefits are increased hardware scales, or actually conversely, since IoT is becoming table stakes, not a loss in hardware sales. We really need to be competitive there and be that preferred TV for the smart home. We have better user experience because I can do tighter integrations, less friction. I can do increased cross-selling to other services. Think like ConnectM. I could easily say, hey, if you want to get better efficiency in your HVAC, go buy all this stuff, and I can cross-sell over to it. And then I can also save money. So, at the end, I can save money on customer service, anticipate failures, those sorts of things. And so the total lifetime value is basically the sum of the revenue plus savings minus your cost. And given that they live 6.5 years, that could be really bad if you don't do it right. But if you architect well in the beginning, then you'll have the ability to succeed. Privacy is really, the biggest fundamental issue with TVs becoming a gateway device because such a high level of attention is paid to them. The privacy bar is higher for TVs than others. It's not necessarily rational, but it is true. Lawmakers think that people don't think they are being tracked on their TV, unlike on their laptop or their mobile phone, where there's likely more valuable data to hack. There were no laws around this sort of data stuff in the early days, so pioneers got a lot of arrows in their backs, and so that's changing with GDPR and laws that are coming on. How does IoT complicate this? Well, there's a lot more data going through the TV now, so I have a higher burden. I have broader network of data dissemination, potentially. That means I have a higher standard to make sure that data is secure and maintained by that ecosystem. And then I have more data sets to manage. So when you look at something like GDPR or CCPA, where there's the right to delete, right to see, there's a real high bar there. But in fact, there's really no easy path on the privacy side. You have to do the right thing from the start. It's very hard to recover if you do bad things on the privacy side. And fixing it later can be quite costly if you can do it at all. You have to have a very robust privacy program, so every feature we do has to go through a privacy impact assessment. And then you have to ensure that the data is secured both within your own facilities or indirectly through your suppliers with agreements and audits. So in conclusion, I think that the TV really will be that device, and we can see that there's a bunch of really good reasons why that would happen. TVs aren't just an anything sort of device. They are an important thing in the household, and we feel like it could become that infrastructural component that could bridge together all of those different devices. All right, so it's time for Q&A. Do you have any questions you want to ask or
Privacy
comments?
questions, things like that?
Yes.
If you're working in the kitchen and you don't happen to have a TV in the kitchen, which is a Vizio TV, how are they going to engage the speech interface that's natively built into the TV?
Yeah, so that's kind of the supposition there is that we wouldn't be embedded in a smart speaker. Vizio is also the top OEM in soundbars and speakers in the home as well. So we're not, but to really directly answer your question, we're not going to integrate far-field microphones in our first iteration. There's too many privacy concerns. There's this dividing, dicing up your total addressable market between people who don't want something listening to them all the time and people that do. And that could really hurt your hardware sales. So we're going with push-to-talk to start with. So it really is that uniquely tied to the TV experience. But the only reason is a business decision around how to deal with putting far-field mics with the cost of a far-field mic array into the TV versus how much value does it generate me in the long run. At the same time, I'm still going to play nice with Alexa, Google Assistant, and Siri.
Pascal?
Yeah, Bill, I was just wondering, maybe you partially answered it already, but I was under the impression that the millennials and younger were watching less TV. So on one hand, we're seeing that there are still TVs in the household, but how do you make sure that you capture everybody's insight or that you have the whole population covered?
I think that's a great question. I mean, the question is, in the shift in consumption away from fixed TV devices to mobile devices. So millennials, are watching a lot of TV. They're just not watching on the TV the same way. On the other hand, we don't see any change statistically in the consumption patterns. They're still spending about 4.5 hours a day in the house watching TV. So, and sales also, as the consumer purchasing power goes from boomers to millennials, we're not seeing any let up in the sales of TVs. In fact, it's growing as fast as it ever has right now. So we're just not seeing it.
How are you guys looking at for power, like battery in TVs, things like that?
Oh my God. If I could avoid doing a battery, I will avoid doing a battery. There's no upside in building batteries into devices. It's just a major liability. So honestly, that's not something we would do. I would challenge the supposition there that power in modern home is an issue. You know, like, yeah, there might be intermittent outages, but you know, the TVs are robust. They can handle brownouts. They can handle all this stuff, so they're not going to get damaged. And I just don't think for these types of devices that's one of the benefits, that they're always plugged in. They're not battery operated, and I don't have to worry about the obsolescence curve of a battery and potential explosions. Yes.
I had a question about disintermediation. You didn't say anything about 5G. I was just at the NVIDIA meeting last week, and some of the early plans for 5G only go up to like 20, 30 gigabits per second, but the second stage plans, which are coming on fairly quickly and using GPUs, are planning 300 to 500 gigs per second. That's basically going to disintermediate your TV very easily.
Well, okay, so the supposition there would be that I would buy a 5G gateway for my house, and that would somehow obviate the need for a TV. I'm kind of missing that, or that 5G gateway would be the gateway for all IoT in the household.
Yeah, that the 5G gateway MIMOs are going to be fairly inexpensive once they come out. They might not just be for TVs or devices in the home.
No, I totally get that.
For a lot of other things.
Yeah, I think there's real opportunity for 5G in the household. In fact, I eagerly wait. We work with all the different networks, carriers, so we're eager to see that happen. I don't think that addresses the broad array of things that a TV can do. I just need a big fat pipe going to my TV, to be honest with you. So if it's a 5G pipe, great. If it's cable based, that's great. I honestly, and I'm not about to go embed $15, $20 worth of additional cost just to get that in my TV. So more power to Verizon or T-Mobile for powering it.
I'm curious how you see the role of third-party integration services like IFT. Is that helpful for your business? Are you trying to integrate with those things? Is it hurtful?
Yeah, so that is what we're doing right now, is we're trying to provide a set of standards-based implementations so that we can get access to all those security cameras or whatever. And then we do partner closely with Amazon and Google and the likes to bring in a lot of that functionality as well. So, but we're just a small, we only have 450 employees. So, we're not going to change the industry all by ourselves.
So I think we have time. We didn't have time, but I'm just gonna offer up one more quick question. But the question I'm gonna ask is, you talked about at the beginning, the king of all IoT devices.
Yeah.
The vacuum folks, iRobot think they're the king. You've got the thermostats. You've got the smart speakers. Why are you the king?
Well, almost every device you just said has some huge disadvantage, whether it be a robot roaming around your house, sweeping up your floor.
It's also mapping your house.
It's mapping your house, but it isn't the most intelligent device, and certainly it's very bomb sensitive, unlike, say, the TV. Then I think when you look at the TV, there's a set of problems we can solve that none of those solve, that bring together your other IoT devices. Like that, I could see where that robot is in my house from my TV. So it becomes a more integral approach as to how IoT is operating in your house. Some of it's driven by BOM costs, and others driven by just use case scenarios that the TV naturally fulfills.
So thank you for that. Do we have one more quick question, or are we done? What do you think? One more quick one? We're done. I'm getting the wave. Thank you.
Thank you very much.